We're going to go over web components. We did an intro video a few weeks ago. Go back and check that out if you're new, but I thought we'd do something a little more interesting, which is to create some buttons that are sort of like if you were using a component library, you'd probably be able to pick out different variants. So I've got some variants coded up here, and just a reminder that if you have a web component and it hasn't been registered yet, the browser is fault tolerant, so it just sees these as text nodes. And that's why we see it rendered over here. So let's go ahead and code this thing up. And we're going to have a class, and it's going to be called MyButton. And it's going to extend, as usual, from HTMLElement. And then, with that, we're going to call the constructor, which is sort of the initialization method for that. And so our MyButton is a child or a subclass of HTMLElement. And this constructor is a convention in programming languages that have classes, and it says, hey, I want all the good stuff from HTMLElement. So hey, hey, Mr. HTMLElement, please go ahead and initialize and bootstrap yourself and get yourself set up, and then pass control back to me, and then it comes down here. And now I can attach shadow root here, and I have to pick a mode, open or close, and we'll just pick open for now. And then we're going to call a render method, which doesn't exist yet, so we'll probably start getting some errors. Let's go ahead and code that up next. And since we've attached a shadow up here, we now have access to another property called this shadow root on our class, or on our instance. So this shadow root inner HTML equals backticks. And now we can do an inline template here. Basically, we can start to use things like styles and markup. So we'll do a style tag here. And we're just going to say button. We'll say border none. And maybe we'll give it a background color of hot pink. It's always a good color for testing. And with that, we don't see anything yet because we actually need to have the button. So you see that we have these styles here, and then below that, we're going to have a button tag. And then we have to use this thing called a slot. And the slot is simply a little slot or outlet or place where this content can get projected onto. So far, we don't yet have the custom element because we haven't registered yet. The variant isn't really doing anything yet, but we still have these text nodes. So it's not rendering a button yet because we haven't registered our custom element. And so we do that here, and we say we want this tag to be called MyButton and point it to the MyButton class. And now we should start to see a button appear, hopefully in a second when CodePen is ready for us. Let's see, what am I doing? Maybe I'm doing something wrong here. I've got a button. I've got my styles. I'm calling this render. Oh, it says I have an error. What did I do wrong here? Custom elements. I think it's custom elements. Yeah. So that's interesting. So we have our sort of unstyled or our user agent button with the borders taken off of it. And let's maybe say that our default is a dark gray. And we want a cursor pointer on this guy. We want to have a little bit of rounded corners. That should be enough to get us started. Well, let's get a little bit of padding. We'll say 8 pixels by 12 pixels. This should be good. There we go. 8 pixels, let's say 6 pixels by 10. That looks a little better. Okay. Now, the other thing we might want to do is say, hey, on the actual web component itself, so host points to our web component. Let's say, let's make this display inline flex. And let's give him a margin inline end. It's like margin right, but it's more sophisticated. And we'll say 4 pixels. That's just going to space them out a little bit. Okay, and now the other thing we probably want to do is say on hover. So we're going to use our hover pseudo over here. We'll just yank this dark gray, and we'll go in the wrong direction. You're supposed to usually get darker on a hover, but that's okay. So now if I come over here and hover, dark gray, gray. Huh. Why is it getting darker? Background, dark gray. All right, I don't know, maybe I've got this backwards. Anyway, that looks fine. Let's move on. It's not the priority, getting the right color right. So the next thing we want to do, what have we done? We've got our attached shadow. We've got our button in there. Next thing we want to do is support those variants. So let's go back to HTML just to show you one more time. We had these variants, primary, secondary, and success. And then the default will be when you don't supply a variant. But we got to do something with this variant. So we can just do that in the CSS because this is just a simple string. It gets a little more complicated when you use booleans and objects and arrays, but for simple strings, we have immediate access to them right here. So we can say host, which again is the component, and we can say, hey, when we have a variant of primary, we want to target the button in that case. And we want to make the background color dark blue. And maybe you want to make the type white, or the text white. And then I'm just yanking and putting, I'm using a Vim binding here. And so then when we have a hover, we're going to say just use regular blue. So now if I come up here with my mouse and I hover over it, we see we've got a little hover effect. Let's work on secondary next, and this starts to get really easy because I can just steal the primary and come in and change this to secondary, and we'll say secondary is going to be pink. I don't know why, it's just an easy one. And then secondary button hover is going to be hot pink, and that should show us something. Yep, there we go. So now we got our primary and secondary. We'll get our success. We already have our default because that's the case where we don't have a variant, but we need to get, when we say success, and that seems like it would be green. We'll make it dark green rather with white text. So color is white, and this has got to be success. This will be regular green. So that should be our little, let's put this down over here. This is our default. Go left to right, make it make sense. So we have our default, we have our primary, a secondary, and success. We have our web component is registered and live in the DOM. And then we have our variants, primary, secondary, and success. We have content that we're projecting into those slots. Again, that's this stuff. That's where it goes. You'll hear that called in other idioms an outlet or children. But this is our slot that we're projecting any of our text content, or really any content within that custom tag goes in there. In fact, if I wanted to say success and more, I don't know why I'd say that, but you can see all that stuff will get projected in there. But I'm going to just leave it as success. Okay, and just for a recap, we had our MyButton was a class that extends from the HTMLElement class. We call the constructor, which is like, hey, let's set up this blueprint and create an instance. Hey, HTMLElement, I'm calling super, I'm calling you, set yourself up. Then return control back to me, the MyButton, and let's create a shadow DOM, and then let's call the render. And now that we've attached a shadow, we can now access this .shadow root. And use its inner HTML. There's other ways we can do this, but this is nice and easy for learning purposes. So we have our style tag, and we style the host component itself. Sorry about that jumping. We style the button, we style button hover, and this stuff right here is our default case because we don't have a variant yet. So that's what's going to happen there. And then we simply have our host square bracket notation to access that attribute of variant. And when it's primary, we're going to reach down into button and style it. And then we have the button hover. We're going to do the same thing for secondary and success. And that's what we wanted to learn. So I hope you enjoyed video 2 on web components. I'll try to find a next interesting thing for us to look into. You see there's a lot of work we have to do to attach a shadow DOM and get things set up. And if you are going to start using this for projects, I highly recommend a framework called LIT, L-I-T. That's what I'm using for agnostic UI. But I always think it's useful to first learn the most bare metal platform-based thing. So like if you're going to learn React or Svelte or Vue or something, first learn a little bit of JavaScript. You don't necessarily have to be a master. I think the same with web components in Lit. Might as well learn some basic web components and then jump into something like Lit. But I thought I'd mention it because, yeah, this is pretty verbose just to get this set up. But hopefully you enjoyed that. Subscribe, like, and tell me what else you want to see, or if there's anything you think I could answer or a video you want me to make, let me know. Otherwise, see you guys next time.